Hi, I'm Ms. Matsuoka, and I'm going to teach you about how to find excluded values, domain, and how to simplify. So first off, excluded values. They're numbers that you exclude from the domain. So you don't want the denominator to equal 0 because you can't divide by 0. So we want to exclude anything that makes the denominator equal to 0. That's why we're going to set the denominator equal to 0 to find our excluded values first. So yeah, first we do the excluded values by setting the denominator equal to 0. So we do that right here. We set the denominator equal to 0. From here, we just need to start trying to solve this. We're going to end up solving this by factoring. So if you look here, we have x squared minus 3x. To factor this, I'm going to take out an x. So I'm factoring out an x. I have x minus 3 left. And now I set each part equal to 0. I'm going to end up getting x equals 0 and x equals 3. If you're not sure about how I did that, please refer to my solve by factoring video, which I have posted. So these are my excluded values here. Alright, so these are my excluded values. Okay, next we're going to find the domain. So the domain is just pretty much the opposite of the excluded values in the sense that, remember, we're trying to exclude these values. So those two values are not going to be in the domain. So the domain here, the domain is just not equal to those numbers. So I have x is not equal to 0 and x is not equal to 3. So really, the domain includes everything except just those two numbers. Now I'm going to do the last part, which is simplifying. So to simplify, all we're really doing is factoring the top and the bottom, and then crossing out what we can, so canceling out what we can. So here, I'm just going to, I already have the bottom part factored, right? So that part's already the bottom part factored, so that's x, and then x minus 3. The numerator here, I still need to factor that. So I'm going to factor this numerator. On the top is going to be 6, on the bottom is going to be negative 5. So on the sides we have negative 3 and negative 2, which means I have x minus 3 times x minus 2. Now I need to cancel here. So I'm going to cancel. I can cancel these x minus 3's. I cannot cancel the x's. That's a very common mistake that people make. So don't cancel out these x's because this is x minus 2 in total. You can only cancel stuff out where it's exactly the same. So x minus 3 and x minus 3, those are exactly the same. That's why we can cancel them out. So in total, my answer is going to be this x minus 2 over x. Okay, and this is really my final answer. Alright, I'm going to show you 2 more problems and then your bonus question. So here's our second example. Again, we are going to do the excluded values first, and then domain, and then we're going to simplify. So remember, for excluded values, you set the denominator equal to 0. So we set the denominator equal to 0 right here. And we're going to solve by factoring again. So I need to factor this. I'm going to use the x. On the top is that negative 6, so I need to multiply. On the bottom is negative 5. So on the sides, I'm going to get, let's see, negative 6 and positive 1. So if you're confused about how to factor this, you can watch my, I think it's hard factoring with x video. I'm going to show you how to factor by grouping just because that's kind of what we've been talking about doing. So it's 2x squared minus 6x plus x minus 3 equals 0. From here, you group the first two together. So we're grouping the first two and the last two together. And I'm taking out what they have in common. So these two have a 2x in common, so I take that out. And what's left is x minus 3. These two don't have anything in common, so it's just really a 1. And I still have that x minus 3. From here, I can see that these two are exactly the same, so that's one of my factors, x minus 3. The other factor is 2x plus 1. That's equal to 0. So I set each one of these equal to 0. I get x minus 3 equals 0, and 2x plus 1 equals 0, and then I just solve. So I get x equals 3, and here I get x equals negative 1/2. Remember, these are both of my excluded values here. And now I'm going to do my domain, which is pretty much exactly the same as my excluded values. Remember, the only difference with domain and excluded values is that now we're just going to have the not equal to sign. So x is not equal to 3, and x is not equal to negative 1/2. Okay, so the last part we're going to do on this problem is simplifying. So remember, when we simplify, all we're really doing here is we're just factoring and canceling out what we can. Luckily for us, the bottom part's already factored. So that's just this part right here, x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. Now this 4x squared minus 1, that's just the difference of two squares. So that's kind of how I'm going to factor it. It's just the difference of two squares. So you take the square root of each of them. One's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. So again, I have a factoring video on that one as well. So we take the square root. The square root of 4x squared is 2x. Square root of 1 is 1, so 2x plus 1, and then 2x minus 1. Now we see what we can cancel out. We can cancel out the 2x plus 1s. So in total, what we have left is 2x minus 1 on the top and x minus 3 on the bottom. And that is my total answer for simplifying. So one last example, and then on to the bonus question. Here's our last example. So we have x squared minus x over x cubed minus x. Again, first thing we're doing is finding excluded values. So we're setting the denominator equal to 0, and we're solving by factoring. So here, you can first see that they both have an x in common. So I'm going to take out an x, and then it's x squared minus 1 that's left. Well, I can factor x squared minus 1 more, because that's just the difference of two squares. So it's going to be x times x plus 1 times x minus 1 equals 0. So as you can see, the x stayed on the outside. The x just stays exactly where it is. It doesn't like distribute or anything weird like that. And then this x squared minus 1 just broke up into these two. So now I just set each one of them equal to 0, so I get x equals 0, I get x equals negative 1, and x equals positive 1. So all three of these are my excluded values. Okay, now for my domain. And once again, my domain is pretty much the same, except instead of being equal, it's not equal to. So x is not equal to 0, x is not equal to negative 1, and x is not equal to 1. And the thing about these is it doesn't matter what order you list them out as, it's still the same. So if you put 1 first, if you put 1 in the middle, if you put 1 last, it doesn't really matter as long as they're all there. Lastly, we're going to simplify. So remember, we're factoring. The denominator is already factored for us right here. So that's what I'm using. It's going to be x plus 1, x minus 1. On the top, you can see that they also have an x in common, so I'm taking out the x, and I'm left with x minus 1. Here, I can see that I can cancel here. I can cancel out these x's, and I can cancel out the x minus 1's. So in total, I'm left with 1 over x plus 1. Now, there's a lot of confusion about this, because a lot of people like to write this as just x plus 1, or they like to write it as 0 over x plus 1. Let me give you a good explanation on why it's 1 over x plus 1. It's because anything divided by itself equals 1, right? 3 divided by 3 equals 1. 10 divided by 10 equals 1. So x divided by x equals 1. So if you really need to, like if this helps you, then when you cross it out, it's just 1. Cross that one out, that's 1. Cross this one out, it's 1. Cross that one out, it's 1. That's what you normally do anyways when you simplify with numbers. So on the top, now we just have 1 times 1. Well, obviously that's 1, right? So that's how you simplify this last problem here. And now I will give you your bonus question. Here's your bonus question. as you can see, it's the same format that we've had before. Remember, you find your excluded values first, then you find your domain, and lastly you simplify. Be careful in the factoring with this one. It is a bit more difficult. So if you need the steps are right there on the side just for easy access. Good luck!